Assalamu alaikum. This is Syed Neaz Ahmad welcoming you to today's episode of NTV's talk show Talking Point. In our studios today we have Mandy Young. She is an eco-psychologist. She has done researches on dolphins, psychotherapy and ecotherapy. She attended University of Cape Town and obtained a couple of degrees from there. She'll talk about that later. But I would like to ask her, where did her journey begin? Her interest created into ecology, the balance between what we are doing and what the nature wants. Welcome to the show, Mandy.
Thank you, Syed. Thank you very much for inviting me here tonight. I'm honored.
Well, we are lucky that you have traveled all the way from Cape Town, South Africa, and you could make time for us.
Thank you.
Mandy, where did this all begin? I mean, what triggered your interest into ecology?
I think it came as a surprise for me, actually. I had trained as a psychotherapist, and I was going through my own divorce in my life. And it was a time when I needed healing. And something inside of me intuitively said, go back into the wilderness space, go back into the bush. And I think that came from when I was about 2 years old. I used to live in an area in Zambia which was quite rural, and I used to run off into the bush. It always used to be a nurturing place for me. Yeah. I loved the sounds of the birds and swimming in rivers. So I think I remembered that.
When you say bush, does it really mean a forest or a certain kind of forest?
When I was 2 years old, it was a bush. But I think now for me it can be any wilderness place, right. Any place that has a very balanced system, where it's wild, where you have wild animals, tribal people, and obviously I've also been swimming with wild dolphins. So it was a place of healing for me. I headed back into the bush with a game guide friend of mine, went to Mana Pools and Matuzadana, which are 2 game reserves in Zimbabwe. And I had, under my arm, I had a book by Clarissa Estes, Women Who Run with the Wolves. Yeah. And Clarissa had inspired me because she'd understood a lot about the psyche by early storytelling. She was Mexican, and from studying wolves. So that's where it began for me. I was learning amazing insights from being in the bush that I realized weren't just for me, they were for other people as well. And that began my journey.
A lot of people say that, yes, I mean, we used to live in and women. We used to live in bushes and caves and probably on top of trees and tree houses. That's a romantic concept now, but probably we did. But man, and including women, we have all come a long way since those days of our great-great-great-great-grandfathers and mothers. See. But can we really put the clock back? Can we go back to we probably can't, but we can definitely benefit from the nature, isn't it? Is that the whole idea?
I think so. I think for me, when you first meet God, you meet Him as a creator. Yeah. And the first process He creates is interdependence. Right. So I think as a human society, we are focused very much about interdependence within our own species, but not always across species. But yet, everything that is part of our life, actually, the air we breathe, the food we eat, the water we drink, comes from nature, and we have to live together in a way that is self-replenishing for nature. Right. But I think it's also a very stimulating place to be. A lot of life insights come from being in nature.
But does this nature and being close to nature and understanding of nature, does it mean bonding, healthy bonding with nature?
The way I do it, and the way it's been my journey, is understanding myself better by going into nature, returning to my roots. I'm trying to think, I think it was Edward Wilson who said that a lot of our natural roots start from being in nature, that genetically, spiritually, emotionally, we evolved in adaptation to nature, and we're not best adjusted to the stresses and strains of city life and a lot of the business models that we set up for ourselves. And I think I like the book by Miracle Rivers by the Borchards.
Yes.
And they give us the question, they say, man with his intelligence, you know, in the end of time, you know, we're going to maybe disappear like the dinosaurs, and we're going to have to ask ourselves, was our intelligence an amazing evolutionary adaptation or a terrible mistake?
Probably we are working towards that. I mean, quote unquote, our own elimination, our own end of the species. We are probably not endangered as yet, but one day we will. Is it possible that we can merge with nature? No, we can't. So we have to understand nature and take it only as much as we need. But then again, what is nature?
I think for me, nature is a system that's
Right.
been tried and tested over time. It is a balanced system. So I think when you get into nature, you immediately relax. And I think with our city lives, with a lot of the business models that we've created, it's very left brain focused, with a neglect of the more intuitive, emotional, creative side. That's kind of considered the poorer relative. And technology and science is much more of prominence. So I think when you get back into nature, a wild place, a place where there is this kind of balance, it encourages you to get back more into an emotional space. And the way I work with people in nature, I hope that, to use current sort of jargon, they become, not only have an experience of knowing themselves better, and a little bit more healing, maybe in terms of relationship with themselves, with other people, but they'll also then become more emotionally intelligent. I hope because it happened in a wilderness place, they'll also become more ecologically intelligent. And I think we need the balance between the two: cognitive intelligence, emotional intelligence, and ecological intelligence, to be integrated human beings.
Isn't this man's desire to come close to nature? Isn't this obvious? It becomes clear when we adopt a pet at home, you see. We try to change the pet's nature. See. We want the pet to be inside the four walls, you see. Whether it's a cat or a dog or a fish or whatever, you see. But we try to change it, you see. Sometimes it works out. The dog remains alive for several years. So do cats and all that. But there comes a day either they are run over by a speeding car, or they just disappear, killed by somebody. See? So they are not happy. I mean, even in caging a parrot, the parrot, if you open the door of the cage, it will fly away. It doesn't feel at home inside the cage, no matter how big it is. See, so is it like if we thought that we have come from the same root, see, same source, see? Are we trying to get out of this concrete jungle into the natural jungle of trees and bushes, as you say?
I think to go back to your illustration of having pets, I think many of us appreciate pets, and it's kind of like an indicator that there is a wildness out there.
Right.
Like you have a pot plant, there is an indication.
Yes.
There's a forest out there, and I think we have a natural inherent calling to go back to nature. I think people buy 4x4s in the city because they actually want to, you know, move from the concrete jungle to the real jungle. But I think it's not about merging with nature, and it's not about controlling nature. It's about recognizing the reciprocal, interdependent relationship.
Right. You have mentioned somewhere your work. What is your wild women, wild men, wild dogs ecotherapy experience?
Okay, I like the wild men, wild woman, wild dogs ecotherapy experience is
Who
spending
are the wild men?
the wild men for me, and wild for me isn't about being, all over the place. It's about being intuitive. It's about being discerning. It's about being authentic, true to ourselves. So the people that I find very much like that and very adaptive to their environment are often tribal people. So I love spending time with the Bushmen, with the Maasai. I love the way that they do family, they do community, but I also love the way that they relate with it in an interdependent and respectful way with nature. They'll still go out and hunt and kill a buck or a deer, but they do it with thankfulness that this animal has lost its life for their nourishing. So it's a recognition. Or if they come across a nest with 3 eggs in it, they might take 2 and leave 1. So it's this respect for nature, for our interdependence with nature. I keep coming back to that word.
Well, we are kind to chicken, and we keep them in cages to produce eggs and eat them all.
Right.
What is the sense of rootedness you have talked about somewhere? A specific reason for being on your patch of earth. What is the whole idea?
I think inherently within each one of us there's the need to feel a sense of belonging. And that's what I think I mean by the rootedness. Even sometimes, for example, if somebody would move to London but they came from Cape Town, like me, I would still not feel completely integrated because my roots were somewhere else. And I think I'm talking about 2 different geographical locations now. But when I talk about humankind over decades, I think there's a rootedness of us that grew up in nature. So even our brains and the way it is constructed, we have the reptilian bonding, basic instinctive part of our brain, but we also have the neocortex, which is the ability to think, to be logical, to imagine, to problem solve. So I think we can't just have one or the other. I think we feel a sense of rootedness, a sense of integration, good health, when we have both.
We will talk about dolphins and other researches that you have done, but we are coming to the close of this segment. But before we have that, I would like to ask you about, on the rootedness, is it because men have lived in cities for a long time, though we have a patch of grass at the back of every house, see, and we spend about half an hour every day. And those who have green fingers, they grow something, see. Those who don't, they will go to the supermarket and buy something, see. But we will talk about this aspect later when we come back, okay? Thank you for being with us. And we need to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll continue with our very interesting discussion with our young Mandy today.